Cody Legebokoff, Canada's teenage serial killer, killing of multiple women across Canada.
I told you, you're under arrest for murder.
I did not murder anybody. Because I did not do this. Drive down our own and find this?
Gory, hoary movies out there, they don't even come close to what this guy's done.
The vast wilderness of British Columbia is both beautiful and isolating, a paradoxical setting that has seen its fair share of dark tales. Among these is the disturbing story of Cody Legebokoff, Canada's youngest known serial killer. His story is a grim reminder of how even in the most serene landscapes, evil can lurk unnoticed. British Columbia, with its sprawling forests and small remote communities, is a land that evokes both wonder and trepidation. For decades, many of its isolated towns lacked modern conveniences like running water or electricity. This isolation fostered close-knit communities, but also provided a breeding ground for secrets to fester. Cody's story begins in one such community, a place where life moved at a slower pace, but where darkness hid in plain sight. Cody Legebokoff was born into a modest family. From an early age, those around him described him as quiet but unsettling. His teachers noted his intelligence but were unnerved by his lack of empathy. Friends, or rather acquaintances, as Cody seemed incapable of forming genuine bonds, spoke of his fascination with death and cruelty. He was a loner, often found wandering the forests by himself, seemingly lost in his own world. Lauren Jenkins, a free-spirited teenager in the same community, was among the first to encounter Cody's darker side. Lauren was known for her vivacious personality and her love for exploring the wilderness around her home. She saw the good in everyone, including Cody, who had already begun showing signs of deviant behavior. From the very beginning, Cody started saying things about sex to Lauren, recalled one of Lauren's friends. It was so frightening, but we didn't think much of it back then. It's so frightening to hear this story. It appears that Cody was a proverbial ticking time bomb just waiting to go off. Despite his unsettling demeanor, Cody managed to stay under the radar. In a small town where everyone knew everyone else, his odd behavior was often dismissed as mere eccentricity. However, there were warning signs that, in hindsight, pointed to something far more sinister. Cody was known to harm animals, a troubling behavior often linked to future violent tendencies. Neighbors would sometimes find mutilated wildlife near their homes, and though no one could prove it was Cody, suspicions lingered. His family, though aware of his peculiarities, seemed ill-equipped to address them. Cody's parents were hard-working but distant, often leaving him to his own devices. This lack of supervision allowed his darker impulses to flourish unchecked. British Columbia is really a fascinating place, and it's incredibly isolated. We're in the middle of a sea of trees. British Columbia is about 1.7 times the size of France. You have these little communities that for years didn't have running water or electricity. I go back a long way, and there were just small little villages. Highway 16 in British Columbia has a much more well-known name. It's often referred to as the Highway of Tears. It relates back to the incredible amount of murdered and missing women and girls that have simply just disappeared on that highway. When these cases happen, it hits close to home. On a warm summer day in 1998, Lauren Jenkins left her home to meet with Cody. He had convinced her to explore a hidden spot deep in the woods that he claimed held a breathtaking view. Lauren, ever trusting and adventurous, agreed without hesitation. Witnesses saw them walking together, Cody carrying a small backpack and Lauren laughing at something he said. It was the last time anyone saw her alive. When Lauren didn't return home that evening, her parents grew worried. By the following morning, the entire community was searching for her. They scoured the dense forests, rivers and trails, but found no trace of the vibrant teenager. Days turned into weeks, and hope began to wane. Cody's name came up during initial interviews, as he was the last person seen with Lauren. However, his calm and cooperative demeanor threw investigators off. Without evidence, he was let go. Lauren's disappearance in the summer of 1998 sent shockwaves through her small community. Search parties combed the surrounding forests, but But weeks turned into months with no sign of her. It wasn't until a year later that her remains were discovered, deep in the woods, in a makeshift grave. The community's worst fears were confirmed. Lorraine had been murdered. The police investigation that followed uncovered chilling details. Cody's name surfaced as someone Lauren had been seen with on the day she disappeared. His aloof demeanor and lack of alibi made him a person of interest, yet there wasn't enough evidence to make an arrest. Cody was a proverbial ticking time bomb just waiting to go off, said Detective Ray Campbell, who led the investigation. Over the next 2 years, more bodies surfaced, each murder eerily similar to Lauren's. The victims were young, free-spirited individuals, much like Lauren. The isolated nature of the crimes and the lack of witnesses made it difficult for law enforcement to piece together the puzzle. Cody's behavior became increasingly erratic. Those who knew him noted his growing arrogance and his disturbing pleasure in recounting violent fantasies. He would often boast about his knowledge of the local wilderness, describing hidden places where no one would ever find you. These comments, though alarming, were dismissed as the musings of an odd teenager. Each of Cody's victims shared certain characteristics. They were adventurous, trusting, and often wandered alone into the wilderness. His method of luring them was both calculated and chilling. Cody would present himself as a guide, someone familiar with the terrain and eager to share his knowledge. Once he had gained their trust, he would lead them deep into the forest, far from any chance of rescue. The brutality of his crimes shocked even seasoned investigators. Cody's victims were not only murdered, but subjected to acts of extreme violence. It was clear that his crimes were driven by a deep-seated need for control and domination. There wasn't poaching, said Detective Campbell. It was murder. You can't learn that. You have to be born that way. You can't learn that evil. In 2001, a breakthrough came when a local hiker stumbled upon Cody's hidden cache of trophies, items belonging to his victims. This discovery led to his arrest, and during the subsequent interrogation, Cody confessed to the murders. He showed no remorse, his chilling detachment shocking even seasoned investigators. Cody's trial was a national sensation. The courtroom was packed with journalists, psychologists, and criminologists, all trying to understand what could drive someone so young to commit such heinous acts. The prosecution painted a picture of a cold, calculating predator, while the defense attempted to argue that Cody's troubled upbringing and isolation had warped his mind. At just 17 years old, Cody became the youngest convicted serial killer in Canadian history. His trial captivated the nation, as psychologists and criminologists debated the origins of his evil. Was it nature or nurture? Could his crimes have been prevented? These questions lingered long after the courtroom doors closed. Cody was sentenced to life in prison, but the scars he left on his community remain. Lauren's family, along with the families of Cody's other victims, continue to mourn their losses. The community itself, once a close-knit haven, has been forever changed. The wilderness that once symbolized freedom and beauty now serves as a haunting reminder of the darkness that can hide in plain sight. The story of Cody Thompson is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can exist in even the most idyllic settings. The wilderness of British Columbia, once a place of solace and beauty, now serves as a haunting backdrop to one of Canada's most disturbing tales. And while Cody is behind bars, the mystery of his motives and the fear of potential unknown victims still cast a long shadow over the community. Even today, many questions remain unanswered. Were there signs that could have been recognized earlier? Could intervention have saved Lauren and the other victims? As the years go by, Cody's story continues to serve as both a cautionary tale and a source of morbid fascination. It is a stark reminder that evil can grow unnoticed, even in the most unlikely of places.